There was once a book with the name, You've Got to Read This Book, or something like that. And the idea was that they asked various people, which book would you recommend that you really think that you have to read this book? It's a very interesting book. I would recommend this particular book. So I think it was a cute title because I guess maybe it was intended that way, but when you see the title of the book, You've Got to Read This Book, you assume it's talking about this particular book that's in front of you. And really what it means is the book that the various people recommend, You've Got to Read This Book, is about various people recommending various different books. But I'm wondering what each of us would say. In the time when I was a teenager, I was an avid reader. I had a lot of books at home and I read a lot. Of course, I was then in the Soviet Union. I was reading in Russian. But in my time, at least in the Soviet Union, a lot of people were big on reading. Here in America, I think it's, especially the new generation, this is less popular, but there are still plenty of people who consider it a great idea to read a lot. Of course, Orthodox Jews happen to read a lot more because not only, of course, it's a mitzvah to learn Torah, and mostly people still learn from books, even though the electronic devices are used more today than in the previous generations. But in addition to this, on every Shabbat, we don't use computers or cell phones, mobile phones, and everything like that. So therefore, people end up using much more regular paper books in Orthodox Jewish community. And even 100 years from now, when there will be so much more technology, probably there will be even fewer people reading in the old-fashioned way using just a paper book, but we'll still be doing so. So I was just wondering what each of us would recommend. I mean, I guess it depends actually who is asking. Depending on who is asking, you might recommend completely different books to different people. The Vilna Gaon, actually, in the beginning of his commentary to the book of Mishlei, the Proverbs of Shlomo HaMelech, King Solomon, he says that that's why the book starts with three pieces of information in terms of the introduction of the book. Who is it written by? For whom is it written? And for what purpose? So obviously, the recommendation of which book to read will depend on who is asking. Depending on the person's level of knowledge and interest, you might recommend completely different books to different people. But there's one book that I would recommend to almost everybody, which I think is a great book. It's a great inspiration. And that is, it's not a very well-known book, by the way. My friend gave it to me, and you'd expect that such a book would be written in Russian because it's about a Russian Jew in the times of the beginning of the Soviet Union after the Bolshevik Revolution, slightly more than 100 years ago. So you'd think this book is written in Russian, but it's not. It was written originally in Hebrew and then translated into English. In Hebrew, it was called Neged Hazerem, which I would translate as Against the Current. But in English, they called it Deep in the Russian Night. It's written by Rabbi Aaron Chazan, who was one of the few people who remained loyal to the Torah and to the mitzvot, despite all the persecution, and had a very large family while still in the Soviet Union, which was, by the way, very difficult. Even secular people in the Soviet Union usually had 2 or 3 children at most. A lot of them had 1 child, because it was very difficult to raise a child under the circumstances. And he had a huge family living in very difficult conditions, and of course, against all odds, made it possible for his children to follow loyally his path and his wife. He and his wife are very, very righteous people, as it seems from the book. And he's not actually a proud person. He's not writing it in order to show, see, I was able to do it. I'm so great. Not at all. You could see clearly from the book that he was a very modest person. But his book is an inspiration, and it was written in order for us to learn quite a bit. He himself was very far from trying to spread, to make a commercial about himself. So I'll just tell you one interesting story that I found in that book. The whole book is very, very interesting read, and I think it can be read by anybody. It's intended for any age, probably. There's no specific person for whom I wouldn't recommend a book like that. Obviously, to any Jew, this would be a very great book to read. So, the story that I want to tell you about is very interesting and gives us quite a bit of musar, kind of ethics. The time when he was taken, one of the many times he was taken by the authorities and questioned and interrogated why his children cannot write on Shabbat, why they follow all these ancient rules of religion. And he tells them that my children are only alive because I'm religious. So that's why they're thankful for a religion is what made them come into being. That's why they're willing to keep religious precepts. So the two people questioning him are very surprised. In what way are your children here because of religion? So he says, look, I have this many children. I forgot how many, but more than 10. And the reason I have this many children is because I'm an Orthodox Jew and I'm not trying to limit the number of children that God gives me. How many children do you have? So they have one, maybe, right? That was the common thing in Russia, one or two. That doesn't mean, by the way, that every person who has one child did something in order to have only one child. Of course, there are plenty of people for whom this is what God gave them. That happens too. But a lot of people, most people, if they don't try to minimize their number of children, they'll have quite a lot. And so he tells them that, look, I brought these children into this world because I believe that this is what God wants. And that's why they're thankful to religion, and that's why they're keeping the religion. And later on, they had this meeting in the school, and the various parents were speaking against this one Jew who happens to teach his children to be religious. And one parent got up and said, why are you all attacking him? What did he do to you? Look, they have all this number of children, but all of them are clean, all of them have their nails cut, all of them are taken care of. So look at yourself. A lot of your children, nobody takes care of them. They behave wildly. They're not kept. So why are you attacking this one person? They want to have a large family. They want their family to be religious. Are they bothering anybody? They're good working people. They're not bothering anybody. So at least one person was found to take his side and to try to talk on his behalf. And in general, the whole book is full of very, very interesting stories. And like I said, I would recommend it to anybody. It's a great inspiration. And on this, I'll end for today. If you like this video, please press like and please subscribe to our channel.